Alaikum, welcome everyone. As we are continuing Masechet Sanhedrin, we are holding on Daf Chof Aleph, Amud Aleph. That is 21A-4 in the Art Scroll. We are in the middle of dealing with the laws about a king of Israel, king of Judah, and we were talking about David HaMelech last week, and we discussed about how many wives the king can have, and he had 18 wives total. Was it total with the plebshim, with the concubines and the wives together, number 18? Or was it just 18, just the wives, and the plebshim could be an extra number? And that's pretty much where we left off at last week's shiur. This week's shiur is picking up about another topic, another very important topic, primarily dealing with the dinim of a yefat toar. Okay, so you got to go to Sefer Devarim, right? So you go to the last book of the Torah, Sefer Devarim. You go to Parsha Ki Tetzeh Milchama Al Ovecha, and over there it tells us about going out to war. When we go out, the Jewish army would go out to war. There was a din of Yefat Toar, a beautiful captive. So what's going on? The Jewish men are going out to war, and they're pretty much decimating, destroying the enemy nation, and the women of the enemy nation will realize this, and they don't want to get killed. They don't want to die, so they dress themselves up very attractively, very pretty. And when they dress themselves up so pretty, they attempt to seduce the Jewish soldiers to want to marry them, to want to be with them. And the Torah tells us that it gives permission for the soldier to take her as a wife. And this is in din as Yefat Toar, Isha Yefat Toar. She's a beautiful captive, and the Torah tells us you have to take it to her house, you have to shave off her head, you have to let her nails grow, and she has to cry about her father and mother for 30 days. And afterwards, he still wants her, he marries her. This is the din of Isha Yefat Toar. Now, there's a big machlokes rishonim about how to understand this whole thing. Where the Gemara says the reason why we allow him to be with her is because of his Yetzer Hara that's too strong at that time. So the Rabbeinu Tam and the Rambam, the Rabbeinu Tam have this shita. The shita of Rabbeinu Tam and the Rambam, very important. To learn this Gemara, we have to learn it two ways: the Rambam and the Rashi. So Rambam and Rabbeinu Tam on one side, which is also, by the way, Machlokes Yerushalmi, Rav and Shmuel. So anyway, we have one side. What do they say? In war, that's when you have the Yetzer Hara, right? Right away, at the moment. So therefore, the Ramban and Rabbeinu Tam give a permission for the soldier to be with the Goya one time, to have relations when she's a Goya. Then she has to go through this process of the 30 days of the hair shaving, the nails growing, and she's crying about her father and mother. And then if he wants to marry, he marries her. She has to become a Garrett, and he marries her. If not, she doesn't get married to him. That's the way the Ramban and Rabbeinu Tam learn. Rashi and Tosfos learn differently, though. Rashi and Tosfos learn that no, he never has permission to be with her. Never. The first time he's with her is after this process. So what do you do about the Yetzer Hara that's at the moment? So the moment that he takes her and he brings her into his house and makes her sit there for 30 days, once he knows that she's already going to be for him, his Yetzer Hara already calms down. It's what's known as Pat Besalo. It's the fact that he knows that she's going to be available to him shortly, it already calms him down, so the Yetzer Hara calms down, so it's not so bad. Okay? So that's the big difference. Machlokes Rishonim, Machlokes Yerushalmi, is how you understand the din of Yefat Toar. Is it one time exemption, you can be with her as a Goya? She's a Goya, and the person, the soldier, is with her. So if they had a child, the child will definitely be a Goy, non-Jew. Or is it the way Rashi learned, and even the first time you cannot be with her, you have to wait for 30 days, and then you Megai her, and then you're with her. You're going to have to learn the Gemara both ways. So let's take a look. We're on 21A-4. Amar Yehuda, Amar Rav. Arba me'od yeladim hayu lo leDavid. David Melech had 400 children, 400 sons. B'chulan, and all of them were b'nei Yifat Toar hayu. They were all the children of a Yifat Toar, of a beautiful captive that was captured in war. Now, the Gemara is a little hard to understand to say that David Melech fathered 400 children from the beautiful captive. Okay. First of all, he only allowed to take one beautiful captive per war. So you're telling me that he went out to 400 different wars and took 400 different women and fathered 400 different children? So some want to say it was 200 wars and 200 women, and each one had twins. But it's very hard to understand it as well. So most unfortunately, I understand this to mean that it's not David Melech's children alone. Rather, it's him and his fellow soldiers that together they had children, and they're considered David's children. He supported them, he gave them food, whatever it was, but it wasn't all of David's children. Okay, and what about them? They're all the children in Yifat Toar, the beautiful captive. And they had the Goyish hairstyle of having long hair in the back. So basically, they looked like Goyim. They had the hairstyle of Goyim. And all of them sat in carriages of gold. And they rode at the head of the troops. And they were the strong men of the house of David. So basically, these 400 boys that they had, whether David had all 400 of them or whether him and his soldiers had them, they looked like Goyim. According to the Rambam, Rabbeinu Tam, if they were conceived from a Yifat Toar from the first time that they were together, they would be Goyim. So therefore, they were definitely allowed to have long hair in the back. And according to Rashi, where they were considered Jewish somewhat, because they had to be the woman had to be going through the whole process. So then the rabbis had to give them a heter to have this hair in the back, and they were considered the strong men. They would go in front of the army. Why they were there? So the Ben Yoda explains that David Melech purposely did this, so the Goyim who were coming to fight the Jews would see their own people in the front of the Jewish army. And they would say, how did this happen? Oh, they captured their women during the war and they had their children, and now their children work for them. So it's telling the Goyim that if you fight with us, we're going to end up conquering you, and you end up working for us. So that would dismay them, give them fear, and make them run away. So far, so good? Okay. Now we're going to deal with the story of Amnon and Tamar. Amri Yehuda Marav in 21A-5 in the top. Amri Yehuda Marav, Tamar bat Yifat Toar Haita. Tamar was actually the daughter of a beautiful captive. So David Melech took a beautiful captive, and the first time they were together, they had a daughter. That she got conceived, and she had a daughter afterwards. Shinemar, because it says, "Va'ata dabirna al-melech ki lo yimna eni mimeka." Ve'isal kedatach bat nisuyun havai achtem mihava sharele. El shma mina bat Yifat Toar haita. The Gemara says, how do I know that she is a bat Yifat Toar? She's the daughter of a beautiful captive, because when Amnon came to violate her, she told Amnon, don't do this. Marry me instead. Let's ask David Melech, our father, to marry us off. Gemara says, how can she marry Amnon? It's her half-brother. They both share the same father. Gemara says that she was the daughter of a Yifat Toar. That David Melech was with the beautiful captive when she was a Goya, the way the Rambam and the Ben Tam learned. And they had the child. So the child was a Goya. Then she became a ger. Now, what's the din of a ger? A ger is considered born anew. It's not halachically related to the biological parents or the biological siblings. That means, Amnon, she says, you're Jewish in birth. I wasn't. I'm a Giorit. So I'm not really related to David anymore, halachically. So therefore, halachically, we could get married. So don't violate me. Let's do it the right way. You want me? Marry me. Pretty much. That's what she said. He didn't agree to that. And obviously he said he basically was the way the Parshim say was that he's like, I'm a prince of Israel. I cannot marry a Giorit. It's not right. Won't look good. So therefore, I'm going to violate you, pretty much. Now, this is very good according to the Rambam and the Rebbeinu Tam, that she would be considered a Goya, and then she was Megayeret. So therefore, she was allowed to marry him. But according to Rashi, Tosfot, that says you have to be Megayer first before they can meet together even one time. So what does she mean? Marry me. How can she marry him if they're actually brother and sister? So Rashi here in the page says by Tamar was Achot Avshalom Bat Yefat Toar Haita. She was the sister of Avshalom. She was the daughter of Yefat Toar. Kodem, from before, Shenitgayare Belev Shalem. Ma'acha Imo. Yaladalo David et Tamar. V'haita etzlo b'torat Yefat Toar. The Rashi here makes a big kind of a qualification here. He says that the din of Ishat Yefat Toar, the way the Rambam and Rebbeinu Tam learned Yefat Toar was that you're allowed to be with her one time. Rashi says, no, you have to get married to her. Rashi says the din of Yefat Toar is that you can force her to convert. So she converts via force, not a willing conversion. And since she got forced, the daughter is still not considered Jewish. The child is not considered Jewish because it's a forced conversion. Forced conversion, so you can be with her legally, halachically. But for the child to be considered Jewish, it's not. Because before, Shenitgayera Belev Shalem, before she is Megayah with a full heart. Therefore, the child was not considered Jewish, and therefore, Tamar was considered not Jewish at birth, and there later on she became Jewish, so she's not considered related to Amnon. And therefore, she said, Amnon, please marry me. So far, so good. We have Rabbeinu Tam, Rambam on one side, and we have Rashi's opinion on the other side. And basically, the way, just outside to review, Rashi holds that in order to be with the Yefat Toar, you have to be Megayer her. However, the first Dior process can be forced upon her, but since it was forced upon her, the child will be non-Jewish. Whereas the Rambam and Tam say one time is an exception. You could be with the woman at the battlefield right away without anything. And then if you want to be with her again, you're gonna have to marry. That's the two opinions. So either Tamar was from the union that was right away, according to Tam and Rambam, or according to Rashi, they were from a union after a forced conversion before a full-fledged conversion. Fine. Now, how did this whole thing happen? That Amnon came to violate her. Well, Amnon had a friend. It was a bad friend. Sometimes a person can have a bad friend. Ushmo Yonadav ben Shim'a Ahi David Ish Chacham. Yonadav Ish Chacham. So he's a guy named Yonadav. He was a cousin of Amnon. So David had a brother Shim'a, and he had a son Yonadav. So he's Amnon's cousin. And he was an Ish Chacham. Amrihud Amarav, Ish Chacham L'Rish'ah. He was a wise man to do evil. You have such things today also. People who are very smart and wise in learning how to cheat and steal and all these type of things. And he was a bad man. He was very Chacham to make bad things. So Yonadav, his cousin, told Amnon, Madu ata kachad dal ben hamelech. Why are you so down? Why are you so not happy? And he said to him, because I'm awestruck and I'm lusting after Tamar. I don't know what to do. So ויאמר לו יונדב, שכב המשכבך, והתחיל עד ועשתה לעיני את הבריאה. Go lay down in your bed, pretend to be sick. Be sick, pretend to be sick, lay down in your bed. Your father will come visit you. When your father comes, tell him you want that Tamar should come and cook for you. ותיקח את המסרת ותיתוק לפניו. So David Melch sent Tamar to go cook for him. And she prepared for him types of fried food. Fried food is a lot of times comfort food. So he was sick, but she's going to make for him fried foods. Now, why dafka fried foods? So Ben Yehuda explains that really, why didn't David Melch pick up over here something strange? Amnon's requesting Tamar to come and cook for him. So the Rambam, the Ben Yehuda says that the difference between cooking and fried food. Why? Think about it. You have fried French fries, right? So you make it. The best time to eat fried French fries is right after you make it. Comes out, that's when you eat it. You ever take French fries a couple of hours after it's made, doesn't taste the same. Also, you ever put the French fries in the refrigerator, try to eat it the next day, it's not even worth even putting it in the refrigerator. Just throw it out already. Fried food needs to be eaten right away. Other hot food, you can make it in the kitchen and transport it to his room, to his bedroom. But fried food cannot be made in the kitchen and brought. There had to be something that was faster done right there next to him. So that's why he asked for fried food to be made. And when she came to make the food, he overpowered her and violated her. Now it says afterwards, after he had his way with her, it says he came to hate her very, very much. My Tamar, what is the reason why he came to hate her so much? So Rav Yitzchak said, Nima niksharalo kurut shofcha. Her pubic hair became entangled around his male member and cut him pretty much. And he became a person with a cut member. He wasn't able to have children anymore, the way they say. So it cut him in such a way that he wasn't able to have children anymore. And because of that, he got very upset with him. Now the Gemara says, if her pubic hair did this to him, she didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. She's not at fault. Why is he hating her? The truth is, no, she did do that. She made sure that her pubic hair entangled around his member, and this way to hurt him. Gemara says, is this really true? It says by the Jewish girls that they have beauty that the other nations don't have. But the daughters of Israel, they don't have hair under their arms, armpit hair, and they don't have pubic hair. Now, the Mefarshim are pretty much argue what this means. Well, someone explain, like the Chidush Haran and the Marshal, that they just didn't have it naturally. Naturally, there was no armpit hair that grew on Jewish women, and there's no pubic hair that grew on them. And this is a question because we know that in order to be considered a gedolah, someone who becomes bat mitzvah, right? According to someone to be an elderly girl, right? Considered bat mitzvah, you have to have two pubic hairs. And if they didn't have any pubic hairs, how can they be considered a gedolah? They never have pubic hairs. So the Ran wants to say that there was a hair follicles that they had, but they didn't actually know hair grew out of the follicle. The Maharsha, on the other opinion, the Maharsha says that unlike the rest of the world, where they didn't shave those areas, the Jewish woman had the custom to shave those areas. So it was a Jewish custom to shave the pubic hair and the armpit hair by the woman, something that the rest of the world didn't do. So if that's the case, that they didn't have pubic hair, whether naturally or not naturally. So what happened by Tamar? How did she have so much pubic hair that she was able, so long pubic hair that she was able to cut his member in such a way? So Shani Tamar Nevat Yefat Toar Havad, because she was the daughter of the Yefat Toar. So she was born as a guy. Therefore, either she had hair or she grew her pubic hair out. I actually saw from the Ben Yoda, he said something very interesting that that they did it on purpose. That they used to have the hair like that on purpose. This way, it was like a siman that they weren't with anybody because it was so much hair that nobody would be with them. That was the way like they did that. Here he says over here. Then the kata of their kids not say kutshuvcha, but I should make a kutshuvcha with pubic hair. She'ela b'tel min sam l'meshua chasarot la'asot chadot v'kashot. That a special potion that they would put there in order to make the hairs very hard. And to show as a siman that no one was no one came to them. And Amnon Amnon כשבוא לשכב עמו הסכים לסבול צר זה ולהדקר בשערות שהן כקוצים. אך היא חכמה וגם כשרה השערות בחוזק נעימה בנימה עד שנעשו כמחד כדי לחזקן שנגבו בשרו ויעשה בזה כל שופחה. So when he came upon her, he said, I know you have the hair there and it's hard because you're a betula and you're not with any man. I'm okay with taking that pain. That's what he said. That's what many others said. And but she tricked him, with a little smartness. She made it extremely hard in such a way she was able to hurt him and render him sterile. Okay, so far no questions. Vatikach Tamar Efer al Rosha, and Tamar took ashes onto her head. Vet ketonet pasim, and the ketonet pasim, the garment that's colored, right? Like Yosef had Tzadik had a ketonet pasim. She also had a ketonet pasim. Asher alea kara'a. She took it and she tore it. Because she was sitting in mourning. Because she even actually after Amnon did it, she said, "Please, now marry me because you raped me. You have to keep me now," as the Torah says. And again, he didn't want to. So she would cry about this. And she put ashes on her head, and the garment of fine weather was torn. And she tore. At that time, Tamar made a huge awareness about the ability, the way someone can get violated in such a manner. Amru, people said, if the princesses can get violated, then regular daughters, how much more so they have to be careful, because if a princess can get violated, then a regular person for sure can get violated. Tamar was a big Rav Tnua. She was very tniut. And it happened to her like this. For those who are not tniut, how much more they have to be worried that they can get violated by such people. At that time, they made a gezerah on yichud, not to be alone with the woman, and not to be with an unmarried woman. Now, the Gemara says, yichud d'oraitahu. Yichud is not a new gezerah. Yichud is from the Torah. How do we know? It's not Rav Yochanan, Mishur Shimon ben Yehoshaphat. Remez the yichud min Torah minay. How do we see that yichud is from the Torah? That is a sign or an allusion to yichud from the Torah. Shenemar, because it says, "Ki yisiticha achicha ben imecha, v'chi ben em mesed ben av v'chi ben em mesed ben av enu mesed, el lamer lecha ben mityachen imo ben achem mityachen im kol arayot shebetorah." It says in the Torah that a brother from a mother is going to come to try to convince you to follow Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says, well, only a brother from a mother is going to convince you to to try to do Avodah Zarah, what a brother from the father is not going to convince you to try to do Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says, no, it's trying to tell you like this. If it's a brother from a father and the father is married to another woman, that brother wouldn't be around so much. Why? Because it's asur for him to be with his stepmom. It's their yichud and being secluded with the woman. Therefore, as an adult boy, he wouldn't be around to try to convince you. But if it's your brother from your mother, then he's allowed to be alone with your mother. Therefore, as an adult brother that's from your mother's side, he's allowed to be alone with your mother. Therefore, he's more around. And he's more around to convince you. Therefore, you see, you're not allowed to be secluding with any woman who is in arayot. So how can you tell me the minute gezerah on yichud from the Torah? Ema the minute gezerah gazru a yichud dipnuya. The minute gezerah, you're not allowed to be secluded with a single unmarried woman. There's a machloket rishonim whether a person is allowed to have relations from a Torah standpoint with a single unmarried woman. Is that usher or not? According to the Rambam, according to Maimonides, it is an Isser Torah, an Isser Doraita to be with a single unmarried woman. You only can be with a married woman, you only can be with your wife. You can't be with anyone else. But according to most other Rishonim, that's not true. If a woman is single and unmarried, there's no Isser from the Torah to be with her. It's only an Isser to be with an Eshidish, someone who's married. But if she's unmarried, so you don't have to be married to her to be with her. From a rabbinic level, it's usher, because you have to marry her to be with her. So there's no isser of being with the penuya. Therefore, you would think you could seclude yourself with being with the penuya, with a single unmarried woman. At that time, the Ramel said, you see, Tamar was single, unmarried, and they got secluded, and this whole thing happened. Therefore, we're going to not allow anymore to be secluded with a single unmarried woman. I just want to review very quickly some halachot of the Isser of Yichud. Isser l'hityached im ervam ben arayot ben zekina ben yelada. You're not allowed to be mityached, you're not allowed to be secluded alone with a woman who is an arayot, who's considered forbidden to you, whether she's old or whether she's young, right? Already from 3 years old by a girl. It would lead to the revealing of the erva. Chutz, who's it allowed to? Chutz meha'em im bena, a mother with her son. This includes grandmother. Meha'am im bito, and a father with his daughter. This includes grandfather. V'habal im ishto nida, and a husband with his wife who is a nida, after they've already been together at least one time. If it's a chuppah's nida, that the chuppah was a nida, then they're not allowed to be alone together. They need someone around. But if it's already they were together once, and then she came a nida, he's allowed to be alone with her, even though she's an erva. Any isha nida is considered an erva. That's why nowadays, all a single woman, there is no penuya that is not an erva. No single unmarried woman that's not an erva, because they don't go to mikvah after they have their cycle. Right, after they have their period, they don't go to the mikvah, and as such, they are still in the state of nida. So all single, unmarried women are considered an erva. Therefore, it's completely usher. There's no like, oh, it's just rabbinic. No, it's completely usher. And so a father with a daughter, or a mother with a son, is allowed to live together even all the time in the same house, same apartment, alone. Aval, im, let me see your question, Tom. Let me just see what you wrote. Chat. Oh, if she heard him, how she expected him to marry her and have kids? I don't know. Maybe she asked him before she heard him, or she just wanted to be married to him afterwards. I don't know. Okay. We know rabbinically it's not allowed, but if a man was intimate with an unmarried woman, does it mean he's automatically married, since it was one of the ways to obtain a wife per Torah? Yeah, but if he's raping her, he usually doesn't have in mind that he's doing bia l'shem kiddushin. Also, he didn't have any aiden. You don't have any witnesses. You need to have the witnesses, and you need to make it known that you're doing it l'shem kiddushin. Since he didn't do those, it's not going to be considered married. Fine. Now, aval im achuto lo hitiru ela yichud arai. Now, a brother and a sister, it's only allowed temporarily. But even temporarily, you can prevent it and not do it even temporarily to be alone with your sister. You'll get a bracha. It's not talking about a married sister. It's talking about any sister. There are those who say even a father and a mother, a father and his daughter, or his mother and his son also shouldn't be living together permanently, alone. And there are those who say that even to be alone with your sister for a short period of time is also considered asur. Now, what's the story with the sister? Which a lot of people don't. A lot of parents don't even pay attention to this. They don't know. First of all, there are a lot of stories, unfortunately, with brothers and sisters. Something happened. Someone forced themselves or whatever it was. There's much more story between cousins, unfortunately, as well. People don't pay attention to the issue of yichud, and they let their kids go together, and things happen. So brother and sister, they asked by Chamavadia. Chamavadia said it's not allowed if it's a permanent fashion, permanent mode, but if it's in derech harai, if it's temporarily, it's okay. So how do you understand what's temporarily? So that I saw brought down many shitot. I saw the Imri Yosher says, and this is the most common one that people go by, is less than 30 days. As long as they're living in a temporary fashion for less than 30 days, then that's allowed. But if he decides he's going to move in with his sister, that's where he plans to live, then even one day is asur. I brought them also. But if he's just he needs a place to crash. So up to 30 days, he's allowed to crash at his sister's house. That's the Imri Yosher. However, others argue and say only 3 days. The Moshe Feinstein, the Chassidic Bracha, said it doesn't have to do with 3 days or 30 days. It has to do with how long you have a house guest. So if you have a house guest just for Shabbat and it's just one night, they're by you, then your brother or sister can only be together for one night in the same house. You have a house guest for 2 days, 3 days, a week, then he's allowed to be there for a week. It depends how long you usually have a house guest. That's according to Moshe Feinstein, which makes sense according to the way the Gemara explains. The Gemara says temporarily; it doesn't give you a time frame, which means everybody has a different sense of time for that. They asked Rav Yosef's son, "What about if I have a son and a daughter at home, and my wife and I are working, and they know we're not going to be home till X amount, till let's say they come home at 5, and we're not going to be home till 9. So they know 4 hours every day we're not going to be home." So Rav Yosef said that if it's a permanent time that they know you're not going to be home, that's going to cause a problem. So if they know for 4 hours you're not going to be home every single day, that's a problem. So he said you need to either keep the door open or do whatever, one of the things that you could do that to prevent yichud, because this would be considered a problem of yichud. I saw somewhere else brought down that if they're already very old, both the brother and sister, and they don't have the Yetzer Hara anymore, and they want to live together, and the Yetzer Hara is very weakened, they would be allowed to live together even on a permanent basis, because the Isser, brother and sister, is not the same Isser Yichud as with another strange woman. But again, it's better not to do that. Yes, Avi.
With brother and sister, they have to keep the doors open as well?
They would have to keep the door open as well. That's what Rabbi Yosef said. If they know that, he brings down as halacha, that if he knows that every day, it's only talking about if he goes to work like every day, and both parents come home late, and the kids know this, and this is an everyday routine. It's not just one day. It means they know this is happening. Then you have to keep the door open, keep it unlocked, or whatever. Yeah, a lot of people don't know this. I'm telling you, I see it. They send cousins to stay together, boys and girls. They get a house, they go somewhere. I don't know where this comes from.
Yeah, it's a Russian thing, Bulgarian thing.
It's very
hugging, kissing. It's a Eastern European culture.
To go all together.
Hugging, kissing, staying in rooms together.
Yeah, it's a very, 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 very dangerous thing, because I've heard stories, and I'm sure if I heard stories, you heard stories about things that have happened. The Yetzer Hara is it's been around and will be around. This is not going away. So it's a yichud is very important to keep in mind. And to end over the hilchot of Isser Yichud
I
is
didn't.
that
I'm sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
I didn't understand this. The thing with Tamar and Amnon. What did she do? She made him sterile. Why?
She
How?
kind of broke his organ, his penis. She kind of
How?
wrapped her pubic hair around it and sort of cut it somehow
How
with
is
her
that
hair.
possible?
Her hair was very, very sharp.
She put some sort of kind of ointment that made it more
Some sort of
thicker.
ointment. Yeah, that's what the Ben Yoda said. We're kind of mixing all the mifarshim together, but it makes more sense that way.
That's
So Ben
kind of
Yoda said she used some kind of ointment that he said all the girls who were betulot, who weren't married, used to use this ointment and make their pubic hair very hard to
right.
show a siman that they're not with anybody. Because if you're with somebody, you don't want the pubic hair to be hard.
That's a good thing to do. Okay, but I
Right.
don't understand
I don't know if
why.
people do that, but Mamai said that's what they used to do in the old days. Because Ben Yoda said. So she put extra lotion, extra ointment that day to make it extremely hard. And then she was able to wrap it around his penis as it was coming out and kind of cut it.
Right.
I
So
don't know
I'm
if it was,
sure
I don't know if it was cut
the
like completely off or was cut in a way that just made him unable to have children.
I'm sure men back in this knew this about women of their times. Why would he risk it then?
Oh, so it says he did know it, but he said, "I'll take the pain." That's what he said. He said, Amnon, when he came to lay with her, Hiskim, he agreed Lisbol to tolerate Tar Zeh, to take this pain, and to get poked by the hair that's like thorns. But she became smart. The gam kashra hasarot bechazik, and she made her hair extra hard that day.
Solomon has a good question over there. Read the text.
Yeah, what was the question?
If she heard him that bad, why would she offer to marry him after?
Right. So I said that it's possible that she asked him before she heard him that bad.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm just thinking. She probably said, "You're gonna marry me." He said, "No." Okay, fine. That's it. You lost it. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. It's a good question. But if you want to make the story flow, I would say that way makes it easier to understand the story. Okay. So far, so good. All right. Today, Isser Yichud include even a single unmarried woman. We said this. But even a single unmarried woman is not just Isser of a Rabbanon, it's actually a Doraita. Why? Because all single unmarried women are considered Nidot, and therefore it's not a rabbinical prohibition to seclude yourself with the single unmarried woman, it's actually a Doraita. And being with a single unmarried Goya secluded, that is a rabbinic prohibition. So even to be with a Goya secluded alone is
Question.
also asur.
How do rabbis nowadays allow Orthodox men and women to have a sleeping nanny, live-in nanny, knowing that it's a possibility, to do something like that?
Right. So when your wife is with you, it's already there's a lot
Yeah.
more.
Okay, we understand, but wives, they fall asleep, things happen.
Right.
People, they want to sin, they're very smart in those occasions. So why
Right.
do rabbis take that chance of allowing it, even though halacha says, yeah, the wife is there, the children are old enough to understand? Why
Right.
still risk it? Why don't you put a fence around and say, better not to? Come
Well,
in,
they
do your
definitely
job,
say
get
it's
out.
better not to. Having a live-in nanny. I mean, so they say they get like old woman, or they get someone they don't like, or whatever. I don't know. But just on the side, you're talking about living nanny. Living nanny is a big issue when it comes to kashrut in the home. People don't know this, but they once they cook in your pots, even if they use kosher ingredients, the whole pot becomes treif. The oven becomes treif. The everything becomes treif. And people don't pay attention. They let their goya cook on their oven and in their pots, and everything there is treif. You can't eat there. I had my daughter went to a friend's house, and she said we baked, and she brought home some cookies, so we were eating the cookies. Then I said, "Well, oh, the mother helped you guys bake it." She said, "Oh, the mother wasn't home. Who helped you? Who turned on the oven?" oh, the cleaning lady, or was she's Jewish? No, she's Spanish. And she put the cookies in and she took them out and she put on the fire. I said, yeah. I said, this is old today. If you just gave me to eat, he gave me to eat non-kosher food. There's no header there. The guy put on the fire and you didn't put it in and you didn't take it out, right? For baking, it could be anything you do for the thing, in, out. Just turn on the fire a little higher. And Jew didn't do anything. The cookies are all usher. The whole oven now becomes usher. So I don't know. So yeah, definitely having living nanny is a very big problem. Okay. Adoniyah ben Chagit. One of David Melch's son, his name was Adoniyah. He was the son of Chagit. He wanted to say that he was king. Basically, this is happening right before David Melch is dying. Shlomo Melch is supposed to become king, and he said, I'm king. Why is he saying he's king? He wanted to put on the crown, and the crown didn't fit. What does this mean? The crown of David Melch had a special beam in the back of the crown that it only went on a head that had an indent in a special spot on the head. And only David Melch and the children from him who were supposed to be kings had those indents. And he tried to put it on his head. He didn't have that indent, and the crown didn't fit. Therefore, instead of showing that he was king, he went around telling everybody that he was king. Also interesting, the Farshim say that even though that's true and they put it on the head, there was a beam that fit into the indent of David Melch and his children who were going to be king's head. However, David Melch's crown, the Farshim say, it wasn't actually on his head. It was actually hovering like a drone, kind of thing, like a halo on top of the head, and everywhere he moved, the crown kind of went with him, and it wasn't actually on his head. Anyway, and he set up chariots and horsemen for himself, and 50 men to run before him. The Gemara says, "My Rehuta, what's so special about these 50 people who were running in front of him?" Amar Huda Merav, Kulan, Nutulei Techol, all these 50 people, they remove their spleens to make a person sluggish, can't run so fast. So they took special medication to destroy their spleen so they could be faster runners. And if you're walking and you feel pain on your foot, you stop. But they didn't want to feel pain on their foot. They didn't want to wear shoes because shoes would slow them down. And they didn't want to feel pain. So they carved out their soles of their feet where they have the nerve receptors. This way they wouldn't feel any pain and they can run over thorns and stones and stuff like that. And these were the special runners that he had that running in front of him to show that he was king. Anyway, that ends the sugya of David Melch, his children, his wife. Let's move on to the next Mishnah. We have a little bit more to do. He shouldn't have many horses. The reason the Torah gives is because you don't want to go back to Mitzrayim. You're not allowed to go back to Mitzrayim after you left Mitzrayim. And the horses came from Mitzrayim. Therefore, if he would be very much into his horses, he'll build a Jewish outpost in Mitzrayim in order to buy and sell horses, which eventually did happen because Shlomo Melech said, I'm never going to go back to Mitzrayim, so I can get a lot of horses anyway, because I know I'm not going to go against the Torah. And in the end, he ended up going against the Torah, and he had a whole Jewish outpost in Mitzrayim. Rather, he can get enough for the government needs, for the chariots, for the soldiers. That's what he can get for. Kesef and Zahav, the Torah also says the king cannot have a lot of it. That doesn't mean he cannot have a lot of it. The way the Mefarshim explained, Rishonim explained, it means they're not allowed to tax the Jewish people to get a lot of gold and silver. But if people randomly bring them presents, or nations bring him presents, he's allowed to accept it. He can't say, I can't have a lot of gold and silver. The Isser is taxing the people in order to get gold and silver. The only thing that they're allowed to tax, how much they can tax, in order to get enough money to pay the soldiers' wages. The king has to have a Sefer Torah written for his own sake, for himself. The Sefer Torah goes with him when he goes out to war. When he comes in with him. When he goes to judgment, the Sefer Torah is with him while he's there. Mesivahu kenigdo. When he's laying down to eat, when he's reclining to eat, it stays opposite him. Nema, because it says, "Vayta likara bo kol yemei hayav." And it's with him, and he reads from it every single day. I think the reasoning behind this is we have to remember that with great power comes great corruption. Right? The more a person has power, the more corrupt they become. Take a look at politics, take a look at history. Ultimate power leads to ultimate corruption. Therefore, as a king of the Jewish people, we don't want him to become corrupt with power. So you have to keep him on the right path. You got to give him musar. He has to learn Torah. He has to learn halacha. He has to know what, as a king, he's expected to do and how he's supposed to follow Kadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, he has to have a Torah on him at all times. Tanu Rabbanan. Lo yabe lo susim. He's not allowed to have a lot of horses. Now, I would think he's not allowed to have even enough for his government needs. Talmud says, lo. Lo yabe lo susim. He, the king himself, his private collection, he's not allowed to have a lot. Aval, he's allowed to get a lot for his government needs. So what do I do with the word susim? He's not allowed to have a lot of susim, a lot of horses. Susim habatlanim. He's not allowed to have a lot of idle horses. Horses are not meant for the war, but meant for recreation, sport, and stuff like that. That he's not allowed to have. Number 9, what about if I have one? The king can have one horse, race horse, one sport horse. Can he have one? Maybe he could have it. But no. Shehu below yarbeh. Talmud Leimer Laman Harabot Sus. You're not allowed to have sus, even one horse that's for recreation purposes. That is not allowed. Now, so why does it say if you have one sus, one horse, and it's not for government purposes, it's not allowed. So why does it say susim? Sus is enough. One horse even is asur. Why does it say the word susim? That for every horse that he has, he is over another lotase. He does another avirah for every other sport or recreational horse that he gets. Yes?
Okay, question.
Yeah.
If they're saying do not increase your horses, and the second statement Gemara says you should not have a single horse for your own personal needs, why the prohibition exists?
What do you mean?
If you are not allowed to have any horses for yourself at all,
Mm-hmm.
why they specifically saying do not have more horses than you need? You already know automatically that you're not allowed to have horses unless you're using it for military purposes.
Oh, so that's exactly the next question in the Gemara. That is exactly the next question. So listen to the next question, you'll see it being answered. The reason why it says loy, him, in order for him not to have more. Because if it didn't say the word lo, so we said he's not allowed to have a lot of horses. That means he's not allowed to have a lot of horses, but a government could have a lot of horses. But if it didn't say lo, would I think, if it didn't say just him, would I think that even the government cannot have a lot of horses? So rather, the truth is, he's not allowed to have even one recreational horse. But for the government, you can buy a surplus of horses. You can have even more. That's why it says he's not allowed to have, but the government is allowed to have, even if it's not for right now need. Surplus to have in case one dies, to have, some of the horses get tired, to switch them out, to have a backup. That would be mutar. So I think that answers your question, Salomon. So yeah, he's not allowed to have extra horses, even one, but that's for himself. For the government, he's allowed to get as many as he needs, plus he's allowed to get extra for the government. Okay? Kesef is zahav. Lo yarbiloi, gold and silver. He's not allowed to have a lot of elikidei litain aspanya. Rather, he can only tax enough to pay his soldiers. The kesef is zahav lo yarbiloi. Kesef is zahav. He's not allowed to have a lot. I would think maybe he's not even have a lot to give to the soldiers. Not allowed to tax even a lot to tax for the soldiers. For himself. To tax for himself, that he cannot do. He could tax and get a lot to give to his soldiers. The reason why it said lo to him, because if not, you told me lo him no, but to the soldiers yes. I would have thought if it didn't say the word lo, didn't say to him, it just don't take a lot of gold and silver. I might think even for the soldiers, I'm not allowed to take a lot. So lo tzricha, the reason why lo is there is to tell us to him you're not allowed to take a lot, but laharvacha, but you're allowed to take even more than necessary to pay the soldiers, because maybe you need to pay a soldier for overtime, even though I'm sure they didn't pay overtime in those days. But for our understanding, pay a soldier for overtime, pay a soldier for special assignments, and all of a sudden they need to get more soldiers in the army. They need to have a financial cushion. Again, that would be permissible for the government purpose, but he's not allowed to tax for himself. Now, Pashta the Amar. Now that it said loy, him ledrisha to exclude himself, but to include others, loy yabir loy nashim. So when it says he should not take a lot of women, that a king is not allowed to have more than 18 wives. My darash bet. What does it mean? Him, the king. What does it mean? To exclude regular people. And regular people, if they're able financially to do it, they're allowed to marry even more than 18 wives. So the law to the king is not allowed to have more than 18 wives, but a regular person is allowed to have more than 18 wives. The last piece of Gemara for today, Rabbi Yehuda Rami. Rabbi Yehuda had a contradiction about Shlomo Melech's horses. It says in Malachim, he had 40,000 40,000 lines of stalls and horses for his chariots. But in Divrei Yomim it says, in Chronicles it says he had 4,000 lines of stalls of horses. So which one is it? Is it 40,000 or 4,000? The Gemara says, if he had 40,000 stables, then every single one of the stables had 44,000 lines of stalls of horses. If he only had 4,000 stables, then and each and every single one of those 4,000 stables had 40,000 lines of stalls of horses. So it's not one or the other, but rather it's both. And that's how many horses he ended up having. Okay, so we'll end. This is where I ended on Shabbat. So this is where we'll end for today. The Hashem will continue next week. I assume it's July 3rd, July 4th. Everybody's partying. So as long as there's halacha, everything done halacha. Enjoy your parties. July 4th is not a Gaisha holiday in the sense that it's not a Christian holiday. It's a secular holiday. You want to barbecue and enjoy it, call it covering with the family. Person should. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prepare for the 4th of July.
Yes, enjoy your 4th of July. Enjoy the weekend. Have a good one.
Tonight lecture you're having tonight?
Yeah, I'm planning to give a lecture tonight. Yeah, I'm planning. I'm not really doing anything for July 3rd or July 4th, so we're good.
I'm working and learning.
Yeah, I'm off from work, so everyone has to do what they do. All right, very good.
God bless. Bye.
Shavuot Tov. Thank you for coming.